on the ELL, it's not the full position, it would be the difference between the.
And that's fine. That's fine.
So David, basically on the next meeting, we'll be voting, our recommended budget will be for an override of somewhere between 800, well, it'll be 1.2 million, because we're not gonna assume we're gonna get more revenues at this point.
Yeah. Well,
If that's what we,
We vote a bottom line,
unless.
right.
Right.
and we go to town meeting, and if it
Right,
requires an
right,
override,
exactly.
it requires an override.
Right,
Right.
The numbers change.
right, but that, we'll be voting a bottom line budget that if revenues stayed as they are now, would require $1.2 million override.
Right.
Um,
And if
And-
no other department decides to add to it.
Right,
Which-
on the
which
town
they
side,
may
which is
do.
possible, which is
And
extremely.
I'm assuming
It's
that.
extremely possible.
While the committee has never endorsed this and voted on the status quo, that you're comfortable with what that represents.
But in terms of
We
useful
certainly understand what it represents.
Comfortable.
I don't think,
Right.
Not comfortable.
I don't
You
think a vote
understand-
on that is
you understand
appropriate
what it
because
means.
it's not a
Yeah,
budget
right.
that we're
Yes,
promoting.
there's no way to,
So we had this
Do it
question last
differently.
year. Do we take a vote? We had to vote for the available funds budget last year. Don't you remember that? We remember we
Yes,
made
'cause it
that
gets
vote.
printed.
Yeah.
We did make the vote.
So we'd have to vote on
We-
two budgets.
We made that vote to tell the people what it would mean if
Right.
we didn't get the override.
Right.
And it's not that we were legally obliged to have that budget, because frankly, if
It
you
has
went to
to-
town
right,
meeting
that's what
without
the
the
budget
second
is.
budget, you
Right.
could throw town meeting into a situation where you have to come back to cut the budget.
So
But
we don't have to vote on
it's-
that.
We should vote for it so that town meeting doesn't have to
Right.
reconvene.
And we probably may want to vote also on, we'll want to vote anyway on David, we will vote on David's recommendations next week in terms of what the cuts would entail.
And the term then for that budget would be the school committee's recommended
Which one?
Yes.
The override one.
The override,
budget.
1.
Well, whatever it is.
Right.
Yes,
Yes.
that would be
That
what
would
we
be our
A
recommend.
Right.
budget that includes all the things we just talked about.
Right.
Right, that would be our recommended budget, yes. I was gonna say, I'll ask if there are any, if there's only one member, if there are any questions out there. I'll ask you.
I'm sure my question is very naive, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. I understand that you have to do what you have to do. As far as voting on a bottom line budget and then voting on an override budget. My question is, if you vote on an override budget of $1.2 million, what that says to me is that 9,500 registered voters are going to have the opportunity to make quality education in North Reading optional next year. And I, for one, am not going to go home and think about that tonight. So what's the other option?
If we only vote for the one budget, and town meeting endorses it, and I think they will, whether there's one budget or two, and it goes to an override election, and the override fails, then we are obliged by law to reconvene town meeting to vote for a lesser budget.
Well, town meeting could actually vote for, couldn't somebody get up and make a motion and vote for a level?
It's
funded
what happened
budget?
last year.
We
We're
have
allowed
They
to-
absolutely,
So-
they absolutely could.
So that, we have to have a budget that represents available funds. And then we obviously have our recommended budget, which significantly exceeds.
But I guess there are no other options in terms of finding that money, unless more money comes into the town at this point. Well, there is one, which was discussed which is using free cash. I can tell you there isn't $1.2 million to use, but that's an option to find some funds, and that's a stopgap Band-Aid, whether it be 200, 400.
If it comes to using free cash, I don't think any of us are going to be looking for anything more than probably just to.
Like a couple
maintain
$100,000,
close to
right.
status quo, yeah, a couple $100,000.
Right. But that's the only other option, unless,
Well, yeah, you have available funds, which is less than status quo, and then we have the responsible override
Right.
amount. But a third measure could be, and you don't like to complicate town meeting, is to put the status quo budget in with the funding source from reserves. So
Oh.
that a fallback measure would be not to go less than what we have currently.
What is
question.
Yeah.
That's a question.
Yes,
It's over a
that's,
million.
it's over a million.
Oh, it is over a million.
From what we understand, it's
1.7 million?
1.7 million maybe?
Where is that money?
I don't think we have it all yet.
I don't think it's all certified or.
Well, if it's been, you don't think?
I don't know. I don't wanna misspeak.
Right. There was discussion about additional money coming from the state that kind of caught us off guard and related to the Berry project that we were unaware of. I think Dr. Troughton at the last meeting.
Yeah.
So we don't really know.
It's not certain. We'll know at our
We're
next
not
meeting
putting that
next
down.
week.
Yes.
Whatever free cash there is simply sitting in a North Reading bank account. No money can be expended without either town meeting approval or a selectman's action under a state of emergency.
And Dan, just to be totally upfront with all the options, there is another option. The option would be to go to town meeting and ask town meeting to approve our budget at the expense of other
Right, other departments.
That's
other
true.
departments. That's an option. Certainly, I'm not recommending that. I mean, I absolutely positively would not recommend it. But that is an option. I mean,
Yeah.
But that's really, so those are really the options. Free cash, which isn't gonna cover, even if there was 1.7 million, we're not gonna take all of it or most of it to cover our issues. What Jerry just mentioned, which I don't think any of us
But
recommend.
if there is that much free cash, I wanna know why, because it may be because it was under budget.
It
Yeah.
might be anticipated. We might be thinking
I
we're
don't know.
speaking of an
I
anticipated.
don't know.
Right, we
I
don't
wanna
either.
know.
We'll know.
We'll know next week, right?
Yeah, I mean, the finance planning team is, we're working great together.
Okay.
I feel everyone's being honest and the numbers are really being delved into. I really think highly of the group of people that are at the table.
Okay. I don't wanna spoil that, I just,
No.
I just.
like you have in the past.
Well, there are times when I want to, because it's not real, it's not real.
Right.
No, I think highly of,
Yes.
I think Bob Messeri's a great leader and he runs the meetings. I think, that great Balcones is doing a great job.
But, now, he hasn't been here very long, but if you think about it, before the override 4 years ago, people thought about a 60-40 split. And the town said, the schools need more money. They voted an override for the schools, and that should have changed the ratio that people thought of to about 63-37. It did,
Well, if you look.
because it continued to be 60-40, basically, the override was being siphoned off from our kids.
If you look at this Town of North Reading FY09 budget worksheet,
Mhm.
and you look at the 21.886 million for our level services budget, and then you divide that into the 32,803 available, or divide 32 million into that 21.8, we have a far higher, it's 66%. Yes. It's 66%, which they pointed out to us at the last finance planning team meeting, which kind of caught us off guard. Caught me off guard, I didn't realize.
Probably some kind of trick.
No.
I don't know, I just, that surprised me.
Yeah, there's a lot of effort to try and get funds for the schools.
Right.
And more than status quo. I don't think anybody at the table is comfortable with what's happened to
Good.
schools this
No,
year.
absolutely,
Not one.
Steve, I don't.
Good.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't wanna spoil the dynamic if it's,
So at this point,
Positive.
I'll close the budget workshop. We will meet on February 25th at the Hood School. I believe that meeting starts at 7 o'clock. And we'll get a presentation from the Hood School that night, but we will also discuss and vote on our recommended budget that night. Thanks. Okay, next, routine matters, bills and payrolls are signed.
yep.
Do we have
It
any?
disappeared.
Do we have, it's not on here, but do we have any subcommittee reports?
We're gonna
I
have
wouldn't-
one.
I didn't have it tonight.
Okay, all right, next time, okay. Any correspondence you want to highlight, David? All right, as I already mentioned, our next meeting, so at this point, we have a need to.
Can I just ask a question on that, on the next, on other meetings? Do you want, are you recommending that we hold another, one or more budget forums? You want to do that?
We
There's
can-
a budget hearing, the formal budget hearing is March.
I'd like to see us have at least 2 meetings a week.
I'd like to personally,
At least.
I'd
I
to
would
March
say
10th.
if we could have
Marty, forget about that now.
one, if we,
No, I don't
if
know
we
what
could
you're
have
thinking.
one meeting, David, at an evening meeting at an off-school site, be it the library, be it town hall, I think one more. We didn't get as many at that mid-afternoon session as we expected. I think one more chance to, I think we got pretty good input and it was pretty consistent, but if we did one more, I think that'd be good.
Before the public hearing or before town meeting?
I think before we vote on our budget.
Yeah. Well, that's gonna
next
be
week,
possible.
yeah. Wait, maybe after.
Oh, yeah, next week's
our budget
vacation.
hearing's
The
the
value
10th,
of
we've
the
got
three that we
weeks.
had last week was that they actually helped inform David's list and our discussion. And
I'd say before the March 10th
Budget
budget hearing.
I think there's room for something between the 10th and town meeting, when numbers start to get more concrete.
Or maybe that actually might be better, because we'll have a better indication of revenues then.
Yes.
That might be better, and then we can get input on where we should put those
I only think usually 3 weeks.
revenues.
Right, there's
Yeah.
3 weeks in there that we could really,
I don't know when the house budget comes out.
I don't think they did yet either.
Yeah. That probably would be better after March 10th. All right.
one motion.
Yes, I need a motion. We need to go into executive session for a legal matter, and then returning to public session to adjourn. So, a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Vaca, second by Mr. Derby. Mr. Venezia? Aye. Mrs. Vaca?
Aye.
Mr. Derby?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you.
8:55.
What time?
8:55.
Oh, we gotta start all our meetings at
Because we
6:30.
started too early.
Yeah.
But if it had been for the.
Yes, number 6 on your hit
Well,
parade.
I wouldn't have.
It is, Mary High School.